welcome to Lawyer of the Week.
This is a special edition of the Lawyer of the Week. In response to the report just released by the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing, we have this special edition to make sure that lawyers in the United States and everywhere take heed to their recommendations. Today we speak with Courtney Wylie, who is a participating member of the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing. Courtney gives us some insights into the process, working with the National Bar Association and the task team, and comments on the research behind this initiative. Welcome to the Lawyer of the Week Special Edition.
But that's true, they make those judgments. And so I think that's where a lot of the shame or the need to keep it secret comes from, is this idea that if people are honest about it or talk about it, that it will affect their career.
Yeah, that's true. So tell us a little bit about some of your biggest wins, Courtney.
So I think for me, I kind of fell into this perfect situation that I'm in now where I was really struggling with burnout. I was really struggling with trying to kind of regain that passion that I'd initially had for being a lawyer, because I loved being a litigator, but I was hitting a point where I just was starting to hate going to work. And just I have been very, very lucky to have some really wonderful bosses in my life and some incredible mentors. And so one of them, when I was at the AG's office, put me in charge of helping to train some of our new attorneys. And I, started researching things that we could do for them. And I found that I absolutely loved doing that, and that this was a way for me to really make a difference, I think, in the profession, and to give back and to help people that had been in that same situation that I had been in. And so I think that was probably, I've had big wins professionally, but for me personally, I think that was a bigger one. It was kind of reconnecting to that purpose and that passion in a way that really meant something for me. And so, yeah, so I think that was probably the biggest one recently. And then I was very, very lucky to be asked to come to Chicago to kind of design and run some of their leadership professionals and programs at the time. And now I'm kind of doing the same thing in-house for lawyers now. And in my current position and boss, I've been very supportive of letting me kind of be really involved with all these different organizations and committees that are working on these well-being issues and leadership issues, and how do we change the profession for the better.
Yes, yes. Well, what kind of legacy would you like to leave with your law practice, or as being a lawyer, or in your life?
Yeah, and I think so I think it's for me, because I don't practice anymore other than pro bono, because for me it's just really important to give back. But so it's not so much my practice that I want to make a difference in, but I want to know that I left the legal profession a little bit better than I found it. That's really important to me. And I think my legacy will be helping people and especially helping, I want to help all young lawyers, but I think women in particular, connect and make sure that they can keep that passion for being lawyers kind of throughout,
That's great. Could you be willing to say a little something about participating on the task force, and how you think that hopefully will impact the legal profession and maybe even be a part of your legacy?
Mm-hmm. I was very, very lucky to be asked to be part of the task force last year. It kind of stemmed out of my position with the ABA as a liaison for the Commission on Lawyers Assistance Programs. And so I was part of the task force and asked to kind of draft this report, which would summarize the research around lawyers and mental health and substance abuse, and then also provide concrete recommendations for all tenets of our profession. And it was a painstaking process. There were a lot of lead authors in this. Everyone did an amazing job. To be working full time and then trying to put this together it was a feat. And we had an incredible editor-in-chief that is working on Sam Bradford, who is amazing and is also the head of the Wellbeing Committee for the ABA. Jim Coyle and Bree Buchanan, who are our co-chairs of the task force, are just incredible. So there was a really great mix, I think, of people that are all really committed to this issue. I love that we did the report, and I think it's so important, but I think the legal profession is really slow moving. And I think there is it will be a long time before some of the recommendations are adopted by a lot of different organizations. But if even a few start, it kind of lends itself to lead the way for that change that needs to happen. And a cultural change is what needs to happen. So again, those are always really slow moving. I mean, some of the stuff that we're recommending is not new. There have been ABA reports and recommendations dating back as early as 1990, and very little has been done to implement any of those. Our hope is that because there seems to be some nationwide traction right now on these issues, that we'll get a little bit of traction going forward. But who knows? I'm trying to stay really positive and hopeful about it.
Great. There's one other thing, because I was wondering about the research about the young lawyers, and I know you work with the young lawyers, which was pretty startling. You want to talk just a little bit about that before we complete?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the most surprising findings from the ABA Hazelden Betty Ford research was that it kind of flipped our earlier ideas on their head of what we believed was happening in terms of mental health and substance abuse. We thought that these things got worse the longer that people were in the profession. And it turned out that that was not true, that they actually declined, that the highest instance of these things was within the first 10 years of practice and usually coming right out of school. Although I think, I understand that it kind of turned previous research on its head, I was not actually really surprised by that. I think there's a couple of reasons for why that's probably true. I think that the practice of law now is a little different, and the people coming into it are a little different. Obviously, it's a new generation than they were, 10 or even 15 years ago. But also, too, that since, I guess you could say, the legal world bubble popped, things changed a little bit in law firms. And I think when they have less autonomy, the pay is not quite the same, but their requirements in terms of billing are much higher than they ever were. And that can lead to a feeling of a lack of control, a loss of a sense of autonomy, which can lead to like a loss of a sense of engagement. The way that you kind of have to work in order to get your billable hours is very much in a silo setting, so you don't even have the social interactions. And I think all of these things lend themselves to increased risk of mental health and substance abuse disorders. And again, I'm not a medical professional, but I think that I think that there is enough research out there to say that these things can, increase the risk of people dealing with these things, because it's a difficult situation for them. And that was not always the case. There's also the issue that you kind of always feel on. So you're in this state of kind of chronic stress because, you're expected to answer emails at all times of the night, whether it's a client or a partner. And you are expected to work these long hours. And there's kind of this culture of, it's a badge of honor if you didn't get any sleep last night and you worked 14 hours yesterday, even though that's a terrible thing for you to do mentally.
Yeah.
And so I think, we've kind of created this culture where that's the case. And what's interesting to me is that, especially the older generation of lawyers, has a tendency to think kind of like, well, I used to do that too. I worked my long hours and I, put in my dues. And it's interesting to me when I hear that, because there's a piece of me that's like, but it wasn't the same. Mm-hmm. You didn't have email in the palm of your hand in a constant thing. A lot of times you would go home and you would be done and there would be no way to reach you except to call you at your home. And that maybe happened once or twice.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? A month maybe, but now, now we're constantly available. And if you're not constantly available, it's a negative.
Yeah. And
so it's not the same that it used to be. And I think there's a lack of understanding from the older generation of that fact. Mm-hmm. And I think it's incredibly difficult to deal with when you're a young lawyer and you're struggling to kind of find a good work-life balance, but also want to be successful in your job and you want to be doing a good job and you want to be available and part of the team.
Yes.
So.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. I try to write about a lot of that myself, and I've gotten good response from that because people want to feel that people understand, that people are understanding what they're going through.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing. Well, I'd like to wrap up our interview with a question I ask everyone, which is, name one thing that you do to manage your stress levels.
So the two, like, well, I'll kind of do these together because they're equally important for me. And I kind of do them together, which is a little weird, but so meditation and exercise are like keys for me. And so I do a type of exercise that kind of has an element of mindfulness in it. And for me, it just helps me center and focus and have much more energy for my day. And it's such a noticeable difference for me when I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, oh, this is why I'm feeling stressed and anxious. Like I didn't have time to like do my thing today. So, and those are the two things that for me, I think are just the most important.
Great. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for being our Lawyer of the Week. And this is actually a special report that is coming out because we want to announce that the work that the task force has been doing, which Courtney has been a part of, is coming out and will be available and online hopefully very soon. And we just want everyone to know and look out for it and be ready to take action to protect the well-being of lawyers in our country. Well, really all over the world, but as a rule, the culture of lawyers and law firms. So thank you so much for being our Lawyer of the Week, Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining Lawyer of the Week. We hope to see you again next week.